Hello, everyone. Now we are going to go into chapter 3. So I would say maybe the overall gist of this is talking about the power of verbal language. So let's get started over some of our objectives for this chapter. So we will be talking about some characteristics of language, why language is powerful or important, how different cultures communicate verbally, how that can even be different between males and females, and how using certain words or using certain language can affect the effectiveness of your message. So, just a basic definition of verbal communication: sending and receiving messages via language. Verbal communication using words. Now this doesn't mean that it has to be only through speaking. So if you're writing, that's still, you're writing in a language. Sign language, even though you don't hear it, is still a language. So those things can also still fall under the web of verbal communication. So with the definition of language, just the systematic, rule-governed set of symbols, words that have meaning for a particular group. So yes, there are rules to language. It isn't just you just throw out words or you just put together letters in the alphabet and bam, it's just going to work however you want it to work. So no. So uses make sense of things, interact with others, expressing your thoughts. Maybe you have a need that needs to get met. Well, then language does help, and also help create and maintain identity. So if say I'm the boss, well, the boss maybe gives orders or something, so it helps maintain that identity. Anyway, let's see. Was there anything else I want to say about that? Nope. Okay. Make sure you're still streaming. Yeah. All right. So with language, it is symbolic, meaning that words represent ideas, words represent objects. So like here where it says the car is beautiful. So when you hear the word car, the car sound, you have an object comes to mind. When you hear the word car, you're not thinking elephant. You're not thinking couch. You're thinking of something probably with 4 wheels and some doors, and it can travel. Also with the word beautiful, you're not thinking of, this would be an idea. So you're not thinking of a tractor when you hear the word beautiful in relationship to the car. So a beautiful car, you would have the idea that it is, probably running. It doesn't have the doors hanging off, or it's not on cinder blocks. It's not all has a bunch of rust spots or anything like that. So that idea automatically forms when you hear about this beautiful car. So words, without people to give it meaning, words are just sounds. So kind of like maybe how we hear, I don't know, a dog bark or a bird chirp. So the way words come about are arbitrary, meaning that a random choice or a whim, or it may be based on some instance that basically helps create that word. So for example, the word book. Okay, how does putting a B, 2 O's together and a K scientifically form book? So someone decided, this binding with pages, somehow they came up with that word. Or laptop. So a couple of years ago, I was speaking with some people from Spain, and they didn't understand, they knew what a laptop was, but they didn't have that word. They didn't quite translate how this device is called a laptop. And, with that one is, something you put on top of your lap. Or I'm trying to think of some other words that don't have, like words like centipede. So centi meaning 100, pede meaning like 100 feet, or but who made up the idea that centi means meaning 100, or quadruped meaning four, something that has four legs, 4 feet. So who made up that this quad would eventually mean four? Yes, it has like Latin and Greek origins, but then how did the people who spoke Latin or Greek, how did they come up with it? So eventually it's kind of like, okay, it's kind of like asking a kid, okay, or a kid asking you, okay, why did this happen? And then you give an answer, and then they say, but why did that happen? And then you give another answer, and eventually it's like, I don't know. So with the arbitrary, and pede, or for foot, how did this word for ped or pede mean foot? So yes, you can trace it back to Latin, but beyond that, who from that era came up with, okay, this says a direct translation to foot. Anyway, one of the ways of thinking that's covered in your textbook is the triangle of meaning. It's just a visual representation, just saying that without our thoughts, then these words mean nothing. So the reason why it has a dotted line is because, okay, it means more like a broken line, or a broken line of thought. So the lines represent that, okay, you have the word bat, there's a thought that it goes up to, and then that thought delivers you to the actual thing, which is the winged creature. But just having the word bat and no thought behind it might as well just be barking in the wind and expecting someone to understand what it means. So if you just make up a word and there's no thought, no understanding, no common agreement upon it, then it doesn't relate to whatever you want it to mean. So language being complex. So there's denotative and connotative meanings. So a denotative meaning is something that's clear, explicit. There's, yes, of course, often found in a dictionary, but it's not something that there's a lot of ways to interpret it. So if you had something like lampshade, so when you hear the word lampshade, that's not like, well, I feel a lampshade is something that turns the TV off and on. No, you think of the shade that goes over a lamp, and it kind of affects the light. So these words are pretty direct and undeniable. Not a lot of arguing over what the word lampshade means. Connotative meanings have an emotional, give people an emotional reaction or a personal reaction to a particular word, or they have their own interpretation of what they think this means. So, for example, I have here Neverland Ranch. There was a time when, piece of property owned by Michael Jackson, if you say, oh, the kid's going to Neverland Ranch, it's like, oof, I don't know about that. You kind of get that type feeling to it. Or let's say instead of Barack Obama, which I have on the slide, the word was Obamacare. So there's people who are split. So they think, they may think, okay, well, great, Medicare for everybody, or maybe thinking, oh, draining the taxpayers' money and all that kind of stuff. So it just depends on that person. There's another example I was going to go over. Let's see. Well, I'll just go back. Another example, say motorcycle. When, actually, I think I have that coming up. Yep, I do have one motorcycle. So I'm just going to move on to the next slide with a few more examples and meanings for connotative and denotative. A reminder, once again, that the stuff that's in green, that's something that I've taken from other textbooks aside from the one for this class. So, frame of reference, how we understand things based on our backgrounds, our experiences. So something could mean something to one person, but based on how they grew up, like say, I don't know, the way I grew up, if you call somebody a liar, that's basically fighting words. So such and such, you're a liar, you lied on me, that, that's almost like get ready to fight. But to someone else's background, that may not be that big of a deal, calling somebody a liar, for example. So getting back to the denotative meanings, direct, explicit, undeniable. Examples, a car or a door. When you think of a door, you're not thinking of a CD or a tablet. You're thinking of, something with hinges, lets you go into one room from another. So connotative words, for example, good, pretty, nice. So with these words, let's say nice, for example. Nice may be, I don't know, in some contexts, okay, a person who tells you terrible things about yourself to your face. But they were nice enough to do it to your face, not posting it on the internet, not putting it in a tweet or some kind of public forum, but they went to you one-on-one and told you, hey, look, you got a problem with such and such. So it was nice of them to do it and say in that particular manner. But if you're thinking, okay, well, they said bad things about this person, well, then that's not nice. So it also depends, it can depend on, how different people interpret things. Or pretty. That's not, you've heard beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Well, also connotative meanings are also dependent on that person. So it can change from one person to the next. So what's pretty to you may not be pretty to someone else. So, the connotative meanings, associate with certain words. For, changing according to person, talked about that. So for example, motorcycle. So for me, when I think of motorcycles, I don't think freedom. I don't think the open road. I think dangerous. So and that's because everyone that I know who rides or had ridden a motorcycle has this story of this accident that they had that almost killed them, or almost having an accident that killed them. So when I think of, if someone says, okay, I'm going to, give your kid a ride on my motorcycle, I'm like, no. So because I think of motorcycles as, just a dangerous thing. Some other people think wind in the hair, open road, going fast, and, that's, it brings up more positive feelings and meanings to that person. Dependable. So dependable may be, I'm going to put it, someone who, I would say someone you can count on all the time. I'm gonna skip. I'm gonna maybe take that one out because Anyway, moving on. Sorry about that. So, some characteristics of language. Let's talk about this level of abstraction. So, when you are speaking, you don't want to have. You don't want to be too specific going into every minute detail, but at the same time, you don't want to be so vague and general that people don't understand what you're talking about. So some of this degree of abstraction, the chart that you see. So if you said somebody, this guy murdered a living thing. Okay, well, that living thing, looking at the chart, I don't know if you can, how well you can see it, but that living thing could be a tree. A tree is a living thing. Bacteria is a living thing. Killing bugs, living thing. But if it's a puppy, then there's a very large, different degrees of living things. So on the chart that you see over here, You see things from a specific type of chicken, the Zaza Siki Bantam chick or whatever that is, uh, as compared to just chicken overall. Farm animals, that could mean a lot of things. So it's just when you are speaking, you don't want to have language that's confusing or too vague. So just having a mixture of um, abstract and concrete. An example of concrete, maybe you hear somebody telling a story and they mention some person and they give you way too many details about the person. Like, oh, I saw, Pam the other day at the store. Oh, Pam, yeah, and then talk about, oh, your friend from fifth grade and you met because, they, accidentally hit a kickball into your area where you were playing, and you thought it was funny that they said such and such when they got to retrieve the ball back. That's too much. That's too much, going into too much detail. So, and it just gets in the way of this story of seeing Pam at the store or whatever. Now, language is also covered by rules. So when you are using words to create, when you're using letters to create words and that's language, there's certain ways that you have to put them together. So I don't know, just like in some languages, I think it's maybe Russian, where you can have a long word and there's like zero vowels in it. That's definitely a different way from how we spell words in America and put words and sounds, letters and sounds together. So for example, phonology, the accepted methods for combining sound to produce words. So for example, in English, we have different ways of using the letter A. So where it says cat, car, cat, cake versus hola, cumpleaños, and gato. So with English, our vowels can have different sounds. So think about the A in car. It's ah, car, ah, car. All right, cat. Still the same, still the letter A, but in this one it has the ah sound to it. Think of the word cake, A. So A like A the sound. So you can't do that with, say, Spanish. Hola, hola has the ah sound. Cumpleaños, that ea, the ah still has the ah sound, and gato still has the ah sound to it. So just when you're working just within different languages, there's acceptable methods of, if you're trying to represent a word using letters, of putting those letters together. And also, like the word nation. Now, you don't really think about it anymore, but you see the word nation. It's Nation. So it'd be, nation or something. But because, when you're learning to read, you learn that sometimes there's stuff that maybe it's not really explained to you, but you just, when they have the tion, it's just shun, okay? And you just learn it, accept it, and you just move on. So it's just one of the acceptable methods of producing words, spelling them, etc. Now, with semantics, understanding the meaning of words. There's the literal meaning of what the word actually means, but also figurative. So, for example, telling someone to please crack the window. So that doesn't mean, take a rock and hit the window. Especially, but in, I don't know, say old times before, I don't know, windows rolled down, only crack that they know of windows was if there's actually a split going, into the window. Or, for example, going ham. And I know, yes, it's spelled out, but if you heard the word, someone went ham, HAAM, standing for hard as a, then these days, you understand that means they're basically kind of like doing something intensely. So, but before that acronym was created, they only thought of one thing. They thought of, some food that you eat. So these meanings of words can also change. With syntactics, this affects your word order. So, and just how you put words together to make sense. So, something that people, that stands out to people if you've ever seen Star Wars, which you probably have, there's a character called Yoda, and he talks differently. So, for example, instead of saying, most of us would say, tonight you have homework. But if Yoda was speaking, it'd be like, tonight homework you have. Now, that's not the way that we normally structure our sentences, but depending on the language, that can change. So, kind of like in Spanish, and I'm not trying to give a bunch of Spanish lessons, but usually the adjective comes after the noun. So instead of saying the red cat, it'd be, the cat red, or the gato rojo would be the way it would be said. So it just has a different set of rules. And pragmatics, how you use the language in everyday interactions, or how you say something to a person in a particular situation with a certain context. So one example that I used to use in my in-person versions of this class is there's this scene in this movie called Tropic Thunder where someone says the phrase, "you people," and that often has a negative racial connotation. And given the situation, after this person said it, someone else questioned, "What do you mean by you people?" And if you want to YouTube it, you can YouTube Tropic Thunder and "you people," and you'll get to see the scene. I caution you, there's some profanity in that scene. But if you want to see a good example of it, you can look that up. Also, another phrase sometimes you hear is "catch me outside." Now, depending on the circumstances or the situation. So if someone's like, "Oh, I've got those notes for you, just catch me outside and I'll hand you the note and I'll get you the notes." Okay, well that means, okay, well just see them outside, they'll get you the notes, no problem, right? But also I forgot the person's real name, but there's the "catch me outside" girl. She was on Dr. Phil one time and wanted to just fight everybody, and saying the phrase "catch me outside," how about that? And basically meaning, they want to fight. So, yeah. Now, language does have power. So, sticks and stones will break your bones, and words can hurt also. And so, we'll go over some of the aspects of naming, persuading, uniting, dividing, all that. So, so with language, allows you to name things. So say you see something that you just can't explain and you're trying to tell somebody, "Oh, I saw such and such," let's say, for example, flash mob, before there was a word for it. "Oh, I saw a seemingly spontaneous large group of people suddenly break out into dance." Yeah, you could explain it that way. But once you have the word for it, it allows you to say, "Okay, I saw a flash mob broke out." It was a thing a couple years ago. I know people don't do it now, but I don't even think people have done it in a couple of years. But anyway, also, what you name something affects how people perceive it. So, if you give it a negative name, or maybe say a nickname, I'm pretty sure you know someone who has a nickname that they don't like, or just a nickname that they've just come to accept. So it's just that, I don't know, say if it's Stinky Reggie or something. So even if that was just, they got that name from something that happened in the third grade, but people still kept calling this person Stinky Reggie, even though they no longer stink, it still gives a perception that, okay, this person has some sanitary issues. Also, language can help as far as the persuasive part, convincing people to do something. Maybe some friend, twists your arm into I don't know, attending some type of an event with them. So, example of persuading. It was like, I don't know, you don't have anything to do the next day or whatever. Unites. Say if you don't know what a flash mob is, then it's kind of hard for you to participate in it. Or if you're listening to if you're in a, I don't know, overhearing a conversation that you think you may know what it's about, but you don't know the language or don't know it well enough, then guess what? You are not united. Even just if there's a conversation that's focusing on a word that you don't understand, but this word is central to the conversation, then you're not united. You're excluded because you don't know the, not the language, but you don't know the words of this particular thing, of that particular topic. Dividing, as far as creating, maintaining equality, can create and maintain inequality to control, to hurt, and to disempower. So going into that, so maintaining inequality, it could be something like a rule that says, okay, well, you can't live in this particular area. Or it could be, maybe you can't come into this restaurant or this particular place dressed in this particular manner. But this is like an explicit, rule, or it could just be something, a sign that says, I don't know, maybe no refunds or something. So, control, or maybe the language of a contract. So if you've ever broken a lease agreement, you pay, heavy financial tolls. It was like, oh, well, this is an agreement. These are words written on paper. You sign to say that you agree with this, so therefore you are, bound by this particular thing. Also, labels. So it could be maybe just thinking that, okay, because this person is, I don't know, what was the word? Maybe this person's, I don't know, atheist. Maybe they don't have anything to contribute in a conversation on rules of behavior. So because they get labeled an atheist, maybe in some parts of the country, it's like, okay, well, it kind of has a negative connotation with it, and it kind of divides and make people think, okay, well, we're not going to listen to this person just because of a particular label. Empowering. So I'm pretty sure you've heard of positive affirmations, just telling yourself positive things on a regular basis to help you feel better about yourself or about a situation, or to boost confidence. So, and it doesn't have to be a positive affirmation. It could be just someone giving you a compliment. So you're wearing, those new shoes or that new hairdo, or got a haircut, and like, oh, such, they somebody said, oh, they noticed my such and such. Well, that gives you, makes you feel confident about whatever, that haircut or whatever. Yes, with language, it is bound to culture. So, and it can not just be the words, it could be how you say them, where you stand when you say them, how close you are to a person when you say whatever it is that you're saying. So, system of learned patterns of beliefs, values, attitudes, norms, and behaviors. So, yeah, it could be maybe when you say hello to somebody, you have to say it really loud. Or maybe you say it in the form of a question, like, hey, what's up? So, and just, or maybe just when it's okay to speak. So, anyway. So, more of the culture thing. So, maybe a cultural norm is, I don't know, say you walk into a room, there's a group of friends. If you only speak to, say, one friend, then it kind of shows that, okay, you weren't, it seems, well, it may seem disrespectful because you got all these other friends. It's not like, okay, this is, we've all known each other the same amount of time, but you only say hi to this person, then, the other people, it's kind of, it can seem, may be able to seem kind of rude. So going on to how this culture and how the language that we use affects how we see the world. So linguistic determinism. What that is, that's saying that it can definitely have put limits on how we see people, what we think of the world. So just by maybe language. So let's say you come from a place where people call homeless people bums. So these days they maybe think of, think of a homeless person. Well, they use the word homeless person, not bums or beggars. But when having that thought of, okay, this is a bum, and because this is just what we call them, and you have these ideas associated with it that, okay, well, maybe they're lazy, don't want to work, they have just, I don't know, maybe bad morals, they steal if they get the chance, all these things. So, but if you come from a place where, I don't know, maybe they use a different language to describe the same person, maybe just homeless, then that may not have the same feelings and ideas associated with it. So anyway, with linguistic determinism, that's just saying that it kind of locks in what you think of this particular thing because of the language. So the language has these thoughts linked with it, and that's just how you think. That's just what we call them. We just call them bums, and and also with that language also comes with these preconceived ideas of someone you may label as a bum. Linguistic relativity. Now this is just a softer, more flexible version of linguistic determinism. So with this, you started out this way, but someone corrected you that, okay, no, this is, you shouldn't use that language. That's kind of harsh. So instead of, just basically changing the words or changing the ideas that you have associated with this particular word that you may use to describe somebody. And that's going to be it for this section, and we'll continue with language acquisition theories in the next video.